Okay guys, so welcome back to Teen Muscle Radio and episode 7. So as you can see, I am very, very lucky to be joined by my two friends, Anthony and Pete. And I'd just like to really, before I get into the podcast, I'd like to explain how I know Anthony and Pete and really thank these guys for obviously coming onto the podcast today and also replying to me. Like back last year, I reached out to Anthony and Pete. I'd been listening to their podcast, New York Muscle Radio, for a long time, and I reached out to them and they came back to me pretty much straight away, got me on the podcast, and I was really appreciative of that, and that actually motivated me to start my own. So before we get into the topics today, I'd like Pete and Anthony to sort of introduce themselves and tell the listeners why you're sort of here today.
What's up, guys? This is Anthony from New York Muscle Radio Podcast, and I got next to me my co-host,
Big Pete Khatcherian.
Yeah, so now we're on the other side. We're actually getting interviewed, and AJ, thank you for having us on. We appreciate it, and it's funny because I remember your message in particular, and I brought it up to the big guy next to me, and I said, I think it'd be good to have this kid on. We could talk about all stuff with teens, and when you came on, I was really blown away by how knowledgeable you were and just your experience so far. I mean, we've had other guests on that, I've kind of done the same thing. They kind of messaged us, and they were total flops. So when you came on, I was like, wow, this kid knows what he's talking about. And I've been kind of watching you ever since. So I've been watching you grow since you came on. So what episode did he come on? Do you remember? I'm asking the wrong person. What episode did you come on, man?
I think it's got to be it's got to be in the 80s maybe. I think because you reached 100 really soon, didn't you? Like really recently.
Yeah, so you were probably like whatever it is. I'll give you the link. You could share it here so you can listen to that podcast. But it was funny because when you came on after that, like I said, I was watching you and just watching you evolve. And then when you said you had a podcast, I'm like, oh, that's good, man. Good for him.
Yeah, man, doing all the right things. And, me and Anthony were both discussing it when we had you on there that when we were teenagers, we've been training since we were teens, and there was just not the information out there to train right, to diet right that there is now. And you just have all that knowledge in you from learning through all these media outlets. And it's great because we wish that we had that when we first started. We would have been way ahead of where we are now if we were doing things the right way. Because when we started, we didn't do it the right way.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny, too, because I don't know if you've heard, I've always kind of mentioned you every once in a while on the podcast because I always think you're doing it right. I always kind of give you a little shout out here and there. So we're watching and we approve of everything you're doing. He's New York Muscle Radio approved.
Yeah,
that's true, and not many people are. So.
This industry's full of shit, and the more podcasts you'll do with people, you'll see. Okay, we can curse on here, right?
Yeah, of course you can. No worries.
Yeah, we said on ours that we have the big E next to every single episode because we're explicit content on iTunes. So.
Yeah.
Oh no, I appreciate that, guys. That's really kind, and obviously I really enjoyed my time on the podcast. And yeah, I will link that below for all the listeners to catch back on that one. And obviously, if they haven't already, then make sure you do subscribe to these guys' podcasts as well. So yeah, before we go into the topic, I'd like you guys just to sort of explain a little bit about your background, maybe competitive background, and when you sort of got involved in the sport of, searching to build muscle. So when did you get into the gym and think, right, I really want to sort of make some gains?
All right, so I'll go ahead first. So I started weight training in general when I was 14. At that time, I was just entering high school, and my background actually, I come from being pretty much, the chubby kid out of the group. I was never extremely overweight, but I was never in shape, so I was never naturally fit. So when I first started, I had no aspirations of competing, nothing bodybuilding related. It was literally I just wanted to get in better shape, and I started training, had pretty much no idea what I was doing, did the typical eat nothing, do lots of cardio. And, despite that not being an optimal way to do things, I made some decent gains out of that, but they were nothing, compared to what I could have been doing had I do it right. Then I just pretty much fell in love with training, started hitting the weights more, still not really knowing what I was doing, but just training hard, trying to eat right, and eventually just pretty much became obsessed with the gym. That kind of led me into more bodybuilding style training when I was about 15, 16. And by that time, I'd already set my mind on, okay, eventually I want to compete. And I did my first show when I was 19, drug-free show, was never really into using drugs for performance enhancements for bodybuilding purposes or anything like that. So I did my first show 19. I knew a little bit more about what I was doing at the time, but still didn't really know. My conditioning was definitely off. I came in thinking, oh, if I just have a little bit of visible abs, I could do well. And I got a big taste of reality when I saw some of the other competitors there. That motivated me even more. Took 2 years off. Came back 2011. Did 3 shows that year. Took second place in all of them. My conditioning was on point. I really don't think I could have looked any better, so I was happy with that. And from there, I pretty much just dedicated pretty much any free time I had to learning how to better myself as a natural bodybuilder. Since then, I've competed in men's physique all the way to the national level, never placing top 5 at a national level. And at this point, my last contest was last year, again, placing top 5, but never above that. And don't really have any aspirations beyond here to keep competing, to be honest with you. Okay. I like helping others and I like bettering myself, but the competitive aspect, I'm kind of leaving that up to clients at this point and trying to help them with that.
You failed to mention that you compete in the NPC, which is a drug organization, and you're natural. You forgot to mention that.
Yeah.
That's like an important thing.
Yeah, I mean, well, as far as men's physique, there's natural organizations that do have men's physique, but that division, it's really covered much more by the NPC and the IFBB. Natural organizations really don't get too much credit. I mean, they really don't get enough credit in any type of bodybuilding competition, which is very unfortunate. I did all my bodybuilding shows in drug-tested organizations, except for in 2011, I did do an NPC show that was drug-tested, but the NPC has like a 1-year drug test policy for their natural shows. So, you could call that what you want. But then as far as the men's physique shows, I've done 5 shows. They're all completely untested. I did them all drug-free, but I was obviously competing against people who did use drugs.
Sure. Anthony, go ahead.
All right, I'll give you the short version because my story is different than him as far as, he started on the heavier side. I was the skinny kid. And I was a skinny kid growing up, the whole 9. I used to wear 2 shirts because my arms were so skinny and I was always embarrassed by them. And one day it was high school. I went into the gym and haven't looked back since. Pretty much, I saw everyone working out and all the muscles everyone had, and I was like, I could do that. I could do that. It's totally me. So started working out, found Arnold, and the rest is history. I became a personal trainer right away. I got certified at 17, and then I couldn't actually start until I was 18. So as soon as I turned 18, I walked into the gym, got hired on the spot, and here I am today. I own my own personal training studio. I have a New York Muscle Radio podcast, which is our bread and butter. We have clients all over the world now. We're training for different shows. I compete competitively in powerlifting. I've done bodybuilding before too. Same exact story as Pete. I'm not a natural pro, but I'm very good at powerlifting. And I started powerlifting last year. Was it last year I started? Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah, about last year sometime.
I did my first meet last year. Did relatively well. I moved up a weight class. I'm in the 93 kilo class now, and doing relatively well with that. I've won a couple meets. So powerlifting is kind of my thing. So that's pretty much my story in a nutshell.
Yeah, we come from 2, I guess, different starting points, and I guess we're in similar places, except for this guy's a lot stronger than me. So that's probably about the only thing that separates us at this point.
So that's very interesting. I'm sure a lot of our viewers can relate in terms of different things that you've already been through, and that's a really good description up to now. Now, a lot of my listeners are very very new to the gym, and they might even potentially be listening to this podcast and thinking, how can I get into the gym? So I know that Pete touched on it really, really quickly, but I'd like you to sort of go into more depth as to how you initially got attracted to visit the gym, and explain whether it was initially like a physique-based thing. So did you go in the gym thinking, okay, I need to go in here with the primary goal to enhance my physique? Or was it more, I want to basically get better at sports? Was it sport related? Was it girls related? Like, what was going on to get you into the gym?
Yeah, it was definitely physique related, and it definitely had a lot to do with girls. Like you said, when I was 14, that was probably the main thing on my mind. I wasn't really like I said, I wasn't thinking bodybuilding. I wasn't thinking sports. I played sports. I played football, so I was actually a lineman in middle school football because, like I said, I was chubby. So me slimming down and trying to get abs was not something that would have actually helped my position in football, but the girls came first. So, the gym was my way of just getting in better shape. I started maybe a week before joining a gym, just running around doing cardio and stuff like that, and then just cleaning up my diet. And I saw results within the first week or so. I saw like 2 or 3 pounds dropping, and I knew, okay, you know what? If I'm doing this, just running around the block a few times, cleaning up my diet, if I actually get serious about this and I go to the gym, what kind of results could I actually get? So my first thing just going into the gym was, okay, now I have access to different pieces of cardio equipment, different pieces of strength training equipment, and like I said, I really didn't have a direction. I just knew if I put in the work and I cleaned up the diet, it would definitely help me. So that was really my mindset just going in. As long as I work hard and I do things that I should be doing and stay away from the things I shouldn't be, then I'll start to see results. And that's definitely a good place to start. You don't have to try and be perfect right off the bat. I think starting, as long as you get it going in the beginning, is going to be the biggest thing. You don't have to start perfectly. You can learn as you go.
Yeah, for me, I was the skinny kid, like I said, so I was really self-conscious. So when I walked into the gym that day at school, you're obviously forced into the gym. I walked in and I saw, the seniors and everybody with muscle, and I said, I could do this and I probably look better because I was so skinny. I was like 140 pounds, and I was tall, so I was like 5'11" at the time, 5'10", maybe 5'9", starting high school. So I was really skinny and I hated the way I looked. So from there, I picked up like Muscle and Fitness magazines, and I saw Arnold, and I started reading everything. I actually started working out in my house. So I bought like a weight set, and I would have to drag the bench out from my bedroom into like the living room because there was more room. I'd have to drag all the weights out, and I started on a very, very simple routine. It was so stupid now that I look back on it. It was like 10 sets of chest, like a bench. It was really dumb and stupid. I don't even know where I got the program from, but I started in my house, like I said. Saved money, and then I eventually joined the gym and went from there. But for me, it all started because I hated the way I looked. I couldn't stand being that skinny. And when I saw everyone working out with muscles, I said I could probably do that and I could look better. And that's it. I saw Arnold, and that was it. I was like, if he could look like that, I want to look like him.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think I definitely had a lot of external motivators as well, with looking at other people and obviously wanting to impress others. I think that's interesting, and an interesting topic that obviously a lot of people can probably relate to is that constant feeling that you're not only not happy with yourself, but you also want to prove to others that you're the shit or whatever when you're entering the gym. So yeah, that is a really interesting topic. I know that Anthony, again, you touched on this because you guys are very, very good with talking and elaborating on a topic, but you touched on this already. But I really want the listeners to realise what like a first session would look like in the gym. And I know that my first session was certainly not anything optimal. But what did your guys' first sessions or first weeks in the gym look like? And would you look back on it now? What would you think about that? Would you say that it was a good start or not?
Well, I think, in the beginning, the most important thing is actually getting there. So it really doesn't matter what you're doing as long as you're actually getting there and just keep going consistently, because we know consistency over time is going to really change your body. So if you're listening to this now and you're thinking about starting the gym, just go in there and just do anything at this point. Anything you do is going to be better than doing nothing, and that's taking steps toward what you really want. So with that said, what I did in the beginning, I like I said, I picked up Flex magazine, Muscle and Fitness, all those types of magazines. I literally just copied the programs that were in there. I actually bought, it's funny, I think it was called Skinny Guy. SkinnyGuy.net was the website. It wasn't Vince Del Monte at the time. That's who owns it now. But it was another program. It was like for skinny guys. It was total a copy. So for those of you that don't know what copy is, it's like a sales page. You get to it, and has a whole big story about how you're really skinny, and it was like a whole pitch to buy this program. So I bought the program. And it came in the mail, actually. So that's how long ago this was. It wasn't like a digital copy. It came in the mail, and it had a whole program lined out. So I actually followed that for a little bit and got nothing out of it, of course. But just going on a little bit of a tangent here. That's how. So I started basically copying the routines in the magazines and Arnold's, and then I found something a little more specific to what I needed, and then I followed that for a little bit. And I jumped around from program to program, and we talked about this on our podcast. So I think that in the beginning, it's the most important thing is just to go and try as many things as possible, because doing that, I regret it a little bit now when I look back on it, because I could have made a lot more gains if I would have known what I know now. But at the same time, I know so much now because I know what doesn't work. And I think that's the key. So again, anyone listening to this who wants to start in the gym, go in there and do what you have to do every day consistently. Don't worry about if it's optimal or not, because either way, you're going to be stepping in the right direction.
Yeah, totally agreed. What would your first sort of like weeks or first sort of sessions look like, Pete, in the gym? Were you more, did you have a routine? Was there any structure there initially? What did it look like?
Yeah, it's kind of funny. I mean, the way it started out, when I had first joined the gym, like I said, I had no idea of what actually worked. I just knew working hard would result in something that I wanted. And when I first went in, my brother was actually a high school wrestler at the time, so he had a little more experience with working out and exercising. So I went to the gym with him probably my first two or 3 days. And he just showed me like the basics, how this is how you bench, this is how you do curls, this is how you use this machine. And I said to him, you know what, just write me an exercise program. He wrote me down it was just a 1-week workout program. Nothing about it was optimal. He probably knew about as much as I did, and he wrote it down. And it was something like 5 sets of 10 on every single machine, 3, 4, 5 exercises per muscle group. And it was maybe 5-6 days a week. But you know what? I had a plan in front of me. Whether it worked or not, I was going to execute it. And I started probably at the beginning of the summer going into the next school year. And at that time, like I said, my goal was just to slim down and get in a little bit better shape. And I executed this program without any days off, without any extra rest. And I just, I went in every day and did what I had to do. And I remember going back to school the next, after summer was over, 2 or 3 months, whatever it was, and I had actually dropped 20 pounds during that time. So when I went into school, a lot of people didn't recognize me. They said, wow, you look so different, And like I said, I wasn't really doing everything right, but I was consistent with it, And I think that's the biggest thing, especially in the beginning, is you don't have to be optimal. You just have to be consistent.
Yeah, I totally agree. And initially when I was obviously starting, we talked about this on the podcast that you guys got me on, but it was the program hopping like all the time, trying to find the most optimal thing to be doing. And I think like I put up a post about this the other day. It's just the issues that a lot of young guys have is this constant goal shifting. So 1 minute they'll want to gain muscle and they'll realize that, oh, well, I'm getting like too fat, I'm losing the abs, and then they'll want to go back into a dieting phase. And I know that you initially said, Pete, that you went almost straight into like a dieting phase to get sort of leaner. Now, I'm sure that there's like a lot of guys that are looking to obviously listen to this podcast and maybe go into the gym with like a muscle gaining phase. Now, how possible do you think this, clear this up for sort of teens? How possible do you think it is that teens can enter the gym very, very new to training and possibly put on a little bit of muscle whilst losing fat? Now discuss this and discuss it, like when do you think that cutoff ends for teenagers to sort of stop that incredible newbie gains that you can make? When did the newbie gains stop?
Yeah, so the newbie gains are pretty much going to be when you first join the gym for a certain period of time. You're just going to be able to put on muscle and burn fat almost at the same time, because like Anthony said, when you're doing whatever it is you're doing in the gym, that's more than you weren't doing. So your body really is getting used to a new stimulus. So it's initially going to put muscle on and burn fat almost regardless of what you're doing with the diet, whether you are restricting calories or if you are adding calories and if you're in a surplus. So a good goal, I think, when people do start going to the gym is, if they have a little bit of extra body fat on, is to be clean with your diet, be better with it, eat what you need to eat to lose a little bit of body fat. You're still going to be able to put on some muscle. You don't have to focus on hopping on type of a muscle building diet right from the start, because people get a little bit too aggressive with it in the beginning and they don't realize that they're going to put fat on if they eat too much. So for me, my results were, like I said, I was restricting my calories. I wasn't really paying attention to too much other aspects of the diet, just calorie restriction, and I was able to still put on muscle. My newbie gains lasted probably at least a full year, I'd say. The first 3 months or so were the most dramatic. Like I said, I lost a lot of body fat, and I pretty much got to the point where I wanted to be in terms of body fat. So after that 3 or 4 months was when I started to shift my focus a little more into building muscle. And I didn't really have any issues putting body fat on at that point. But my goal were definitely switched after I lost the initial fat. So in the beginning, you will see those results as long as you're consistent with everything.
Yeah, I'm gonna jump in there because that's what I wanted to mention. In the beginning, when I started, there was no macros. Follow this formula to find out macros. It was just like, all right, you have to eat 6 meals a day. 6 to 8 meals a day. It has to be this for breakfast. Egg whites and oatmeal every morning for breakfast. Chicken and sweet potato for lunch. It was the same kind of thing. So like I said, when I started, I didn't know anything about calories in versus calories out. That was such like, nah, that doesn't count. As long as I eat clean, I'm fine. So for me, when I was starting, I wanted to put on mass. That was my goal. I wanted to gain as much as possible. But I was eating so low calorie because I was eating those quote unquote clean foods that I wasn't putting on any mass. So for me, in the beginning, I was still getting results because in the beginning you could almost do anything and get results. But I didn't get the most optimal amount of results because my diet was not in check. I was fooled into thinking that I had to eat certain foods to gain mass. And in reality, it was just setting me back. So for me, I didn't actually start gaining traction until probably about 2 or 3 years in when I actually started to learn more about nutrition. Mm-hmm. So I made good gains in the beginning. I shouldn't say that because I was really strong in the beginning. Like I started off, I benched 275 pretty much right away. So for me, strength came easy. It was just that part of it that really was lacking.
I'd say that I totally agree with both of those points of view, and I think that it's very important for sort of younger guys, teens, to really take that initial phase of training and most important also nutrition and sort of enjoy yourself and live life like just chilling for that stage, because a lot of people can, with today's information, I think they can almost take it a bit too seriously too soon. Start to track macros. Like I've had some like 14, 15-year-old boys like message me saying, what macro split should I be on? Like, should I have this percentage carbs, fats? And it's like almost you want to tell them, no, like don't do the optimal thing yet. Just like enjoy like family meals. Like they're missing out on family meals and things like that to track macros. And I think that it is important for obviously people to take away the message that you can actually make really quick progress using something that maybe isn't quote unquote optimal straight away. So yeah, I think that's really, really good for people to take away.
I wanted to jump in there. You mentioned, counting macros.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be so elaborate in the beginning also. You could just start out by counting calories. That'll be way better than anything else, especially in the beginning. Because if you're listening to this and you're a beginner and you're skinny like I was, and you're just trying to eat clean foods, you're not even breaking 2,500 calories a day. And if you're a skinny kid at 14 years old, guaranteed you need more than that to gain mass. So if you're just counting your calories and you're learning the basics of it, you'd be way better off than kind of winging it. If you're that type of person, so for that person who emailed you that question, how many carbs, how much fat, if they were listening to this, that's what I would have told them. Just count your calories and just do whatever you want to do. Just take it easy, take a laid back more approach to it.
Yeah, at least have a gauge. If you have a goal, then you've got to have a gauge. I think that, counting calories or, tracking body weight and eating like calorie dense foods at least would be significant in order for them to make progress. So I know that one of you briefly touched on it, but at what point in your training did you realize, okay, I want to do something optimal to chase like a really specific goal?
Day one.
Like when was it? So like a specific goal, like a bodybuilding show. I know for you, Pete, you got very involved in bodybuilding at a young age. What point did that switch come on that you thought, okay, like I'm ready, looking at your physique, like I'm ready to take something optimal and go for like a bodybuilding prep, which is quite serious?
Yeah, so for me, it definitely wasn't from day one. Like I said, I just knew if I restricted calories, that would work. And then I knew, intuitively that I probably wasn't doing things optimally, but I saw them working. So I figured, if it's not broke, don't fix it. But then I kind of, when my goals shifted, and to be honest, my goals actually, it's funny the way it happened very, very fast. I was still in that mindset, okay, burn fat, get skinny. That was my goal. And I was in the gym one day, and a friend of mine actually made a reference to a scene from Pumping Iron, and I had never seen the movie before. And I said, what movie is that from? And he's like, oh, it's Pumping Iron. So I went home and I watched the movie, and I saw Arnold, and I just saw all these bodybuilders, and I really didn't have access to anything like that. I never saw anything like that before, and instantly my mindset switched. Okay, you know what? This looks way better than being skinny. I want to look like these guys, And I knew that what I was doing was not resulting in that. So I said, okay, I have to change my approach. So I started researching what do bodybuilders do? What do bodybuilders do? And I know, okay, I need to eat a lot more protein. I need to weight train a lot more, and I need to be consistent with it as far as weight training. You know, my cardio was a lot more consistent than my weight training, but I knew the weights were really going to be the key, and, you know, eating a lot more food than I was eating. So at that point, for whatever reason, I guess it was motivation, I said, you know, I have to go about this the right way. So I found as much information I could on how to build more muscle and look more like a bodybuilder. And, you know, my approach then was still nowhere near optimal, but it was good enough to really start getting me towards my goal. And, you know, I kind of had the same results that I did when I first started with the dieting, where I was able to put muscle on very, very fast because I really switched from eating a restricted calorie diet to eating a calorie diet probably around maintenance, but with a lot more protein and focusing on a lot of weight training. And again, my body wasn't used to that, so the results were pretty quick. So
that's interesting. What about you, Anthony? When did the switch turn on for you to take things more seriously?
I would definitely say when I entered my first bodybuilding contest. And for me, I never really felt like training was, and it's so funny how things always come back around, but for me, it was always like, I always felt like I had training good. It was always the nutrition that I always felt like I lacked in. And it wasn't because I didn't have the discipline to follow something. It was just because I didn't have the wherewithal with it. So, and for example, when I first started, it was all bro science. In the beginning, I had people used to tell me, yeah, you have to eat sweet potato. And I would say, well, why sweet potato? Why can I have rice instead? No, sweet potato. Sweet potato is going to fill you out. Or, just have a handful of peanuts with every meal. That's going to help you grow. These are the things that I had in the beginning. So for me, when I shifted to a contest prep, I followed a standard meal plan, but I took it more seriously as far as what I was doing. And then actually I contacted my first coach, which was Lane Norton, and he showed me, counting macros, and that whole shift for me really was like a big eye opener. And now that I think about it, now that I got my degree in nutrition, following up with this, I got my degree in nutrition, and I studied all this, so now I know the ins and outs of nutrition. Now I feel like I don't know anything about training, but I know a lot about nutrition. So it's funny how things always come back around. But for me, it was when I definitely entered my first show that I really turned on the more serious switch with it.
Interesting. Yes, it's definitely the same for me. I think I learned the most about nutrition when I entered my first bodybuilding prep, and that's maybe not the most optimal way to learn about how to definitely sort of like create a great diet, because I could have gone through a much better gaining phase. I could have learned more about nutrition and approached my bodybuilding prep with a lot more confidence. Obviously, the second time round, I was way more confident because I'd gone through a whole prep, a whole gaining phase, and then I had a nice structured diet, and it worked so much better. So I think that if you are planning to do something like that, then maybe track macros to get lean, but maybe don't compete the first time type thing. But that is interesting, and I think obviously we're all pretty much all three of us inspired to sort of follow nutrition further by obviously getting into bodybuilding, which is pretty in the deep end, but it served us well, obviously, quite clearly. So when you obviously got a grip on nutrition, I know that you are on a meal plan, Anthony, but Pete, what would like an average day look like? So describe like maybe a full day of eating in your life when you were dieting down, and when maybe you were like a bro. What would that look like?
Mine is probably going to look exactly the same. So well, answer this question for both of us.
So you want to know about my initial diet when I first started just getting in better shape, when I really didn't know what I was doing?
Yeah. So I'll tell you tell that, and then I'll tell my peak week and my refeeds, what I used to do then, because I'm sure it's the same. Go ahead.
Oh, wow. Well, the first rule of my diet when I first started was, okay, if I want to lose weight, if anything has fat in it, I don't eat it. So if I looked at the back of a nutrition label and I saw fat on it, I wouldn't say I didn't eat it, but anything that was excessively high in fat, that food was off limits. Okay, so big mistake right there. But you know what? Like I said, I still lost weight because it was better than what I was doing. So I would restrict fat. I would try and eat things that were just low calorie in general. So a typical day, man, this was a long time ago. I'm going to try and remember. Breakfast might have been, I think I was doing fasted cardio when I first started too, by the way. So it was fasted cardio.
Then that didn't even exist. when I started. You know that? That wasn't a thing.
Yeah, I was doing fasted cardio, and then I would have maybe Cheerios with water in it. Believe it or not, I was restricting. I said milk; it has
No
fat in it.
milk.
You know, just cut it out. I mean, there was fat-free
Why
milk,
wouldn't
but
you
I
just eat it
figured
plain?
I didn't like it plain. I don't
Like with
know.
your hand.
That was the way I did it.
Water,
and
though?
yeah,
What's wrong with you? Water?
Hey, listen, I'm just telling you what I did. I'm just telling you. I would never do it again, and I would never recommend it. But that might have been my breakfast. Keep it as low calorie as possible. Lunch, I would try and go with maybe a grilled chicken sandwich. That was a staple all the time. A grilled chicken sandwich. Pretty much didn't eat anything again until dinner. Dinner would probably be another meat or something like that. It's probably the only fat I might get in my diet. I might have had like a little bit of ground beef, but I would eat it pretty much with no carbs, nothing. I might just put it in a little bit of ketchup. And then the rest of the night, I would try not to eat anything, And this was a very short period of time. Like I said, it was pretty much 2 or 3 months. It's definitely not sustainable, and I wouldn't recommend that for anybody. But that's how I initially started. Then when I started to learn a lot more about nutrition, I did transition much more into the bro type diet. And I said, okay, I have to have protein with every meal. I have to have meals three hours apart. So when I switched into a muscle building phase, my diet was, whey protein in the morning. Lunch was the grilled chicken sandwich again. 3 hours later, I'd make sure I have more fats in the diet. I have peanut butter and jelly with another protein shake. Then for dinner, more chicken with whole wheat pasta, brown rice, something like that. And it was pretty much those type of foods just around the clock every 3 hours. It wasn't about the amounts. The focus was more on, okay, protein every meal and eating every 3 hours. There was no meals spaced out any further than 3 hours.
Actually, it was different than mine because I'm surprised you mentioned bread. That when I started it was like 0506, and bread was out of the question. It was basically the diet was egg whites and oatmeal in the morning. Then it was chicken with vegetables for lunch, and then the next 2 or 3 meals after that were pretty much the same, some type of protein and a vegetable, and that was pretty much it. Like if I had carbs, it was like a sweet potato. I would do a carb up, quote unquote, every twice a week. And it was just sweet potato and oatmeal. I would have like a bowl of oatmeal and a little sweet potato, and that would be my carb up. So it's so different from yours because it's funny because bread was like bread and pasta. Forget it. You can't have pasta when you're dieting.
No, I mean,
and you had to have asparagus because that thinned the skin.
Well, it's funny because, like I said, I was researching so many different ways to get bigger, to build more muscle, and there wasn't as much information as there is today, obviously. So what I did found, everything was a little bit different. Like you'll see a lot of conflicting, information out there today. But the one trend that was the same in all of them was meals approximately 3 hours apart, and protein in all of them. So I figured at that time that if I had those two things covered, I should be pretty good. And you know what? To be honest with you, I mean, it was a lot better than what I was doing. So I did get results.
Yeah. I mean, that's not actually like too bad of a thing to suggest to someone, spreading out meals every 3 hours, protein, because at least then you are actually going to work up an overall protein intake that is probably sufficient, if not too much. Yeah. I think that's something that I initially did. I initially went into like a gaining phase and I was force feeding food like to no tomorrow, and I think that I was like massively over consuming protein. And now obviously with
everybody does that.
Yeah, lots of research proving that obviously you don't need to overconsume protein. So I think that obviously people are more educated now than maybe even like 2-3 years ago when I first started. There's a lot better information out there, and it's come very, very quickly. So it sounds like obviously you guys have experienced like your fair share of nutrition myths and all of the crap. Yeah, but. What would you say to obviously teenagers, like sort of maybe making a start with nutrition, be it a gaining phase, or actually, let's cover a gaining phase. So say someone's listening to this now, like what would you say in terms of avoiding the nutrition myths but living as a teenager? What would be your best advice moving forward into a gaining phase for a young athlete at the moment?
You want to go first? You want me to go first?
You go ahead.
You want to rock, paper, scissors for it? All right. So pretty much what I would recommend someone starting out right now, I mean, I mentioned this a little bit earlier, but if you're going into a gaining phase, the most important thing is going to be your calories. Now, you got to keep your lifestyle in mind with that. When we're in teen, you're in high school, you don't really have access to a ton of food, or you actually at that time, you should be working. I was working at that time, but a lot of teens don't work. but you're not going to have much money to spend on supplements or, whey protein and stuff like that. So what I would recommend in the beginning is just to pretty much start out counting your calories. Figure out how many calories you're eating now, get a good grasp on, portion size and things like that. Count your calories. And then if you're really trying to gain, slowly add calories every week, maybe 200 to 300, depending if you're gaining or not. Focus on weighing yourself every couple of days on the scale and just see if everything's moving along. It's that simple. It doesn't have to be rocket science. You don't have to go into all these, crazy formulas. Start out with what you're doing now. If you find you're not gaining, add some calories in daily. If you're still not gaining, add some more. And you'll find as a teen, because your metabolism is going to be so much faster and your hormones are at its peak at this point, you could put on a lot really quickly, but you're going to need a lot of fuel to fuel that fire.
For sure.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. And, I really did not much to add to that. The only thing I would say is, don't try and change what you're doing dramatically. Like Anthony said, make sure it fits into your lifestyle. If you read something that says, okay, 7 meals a day is going to be better than eating 3, but you're not the type of person that could fit 7 meals in a day, don't stress it. If your overall caloric intake is the same, and you're hitting the right amount of protein intake, you're going to get the results. So if your goal is you just want to add a little bit of muscle, find out exactly how many calories you're eating right now. Start, get a good idea. Try and keep that consistent and make sure you're hitting enough protein intake. A gram of protein per pound of body weight is good. And see how your body responds. Try and keep it consistent, because a lot of times people aren't consistent in the beginning. If you eat 2,500 calories, keep it at 2,500 calories for a week. See if you're gaining weight, losing weight, maintaining. And then if you have to add more, you add more. That's pretty much it. And you just consistency.
Yeah, I totally agree, and I think that a lot of teens will benefit from that advice. And I think people sometimes get like het up in whether like what approach they should take and overcomplicate things, and that's something that obviously I've said before. It's like this overcomplication of the process. And a lot of people, I think I struggled initially, was like trying to eat too clean. I think was a thing that I did, and like Anthony said, you're simply not going to be able to get the calories in that you require when you're just trying to just force feed clean food, clean calories, because they're just not going to add up. Like have a peanut butter sandwich now and again, like things like that. That's just going to whack your calories through the roof and get you gaining. So Anthony, actually, instead of stealing a question, you actually brought me to a question. So I have a question now about, obviously I'm a personal trainer, you're a personal trainer. We both have sort of slightly flexible lifestyles where we can quite easily modify our schedule in order to fit in meals, eats, and prep our food, etc. Now, when you're a teenager, when you're young, you probably don't have, well, you maybe do, you may be making edgeways and you're lucky to be in a great position with your job. But I know when I was younger, I worked in a call center, I worked in a supermarket, I worked in retail for like 3 years. How would you recommend, what would be your biggest recommendation for teenagers that are currently like working a job, very, very busy? How would you recommend them fitting in the gym and nutrition like around that lifestyle? And did you have any experiences of this when you were working as teenagers?
Well, I got news for everybody listening to this. If you're a teenager now listening to this, it just gets harder. As you get older, you get married, you have kids, you have a house, you have responsibilities, you get a real job. It gets a lot harder to fit it in. So you just make the time for it. You have to have a burning passion for something. And if you love bodybuilding and want to change your physique, you're going to make time for it no matter what. I mean, obviously being prepared for your day is going to be your best bet. Maybe figuring out how many calories you need for the day and just kind of packing food with you and bringing it with you. I mean, as a teen, it really doesn't matter. If you're not doing contest prep, don't worry about eating every 3 hours by the dot. Maybe bring a shake with you, have a protein bar, stuff like that. Quick, easy meals. You could bring a sandwich with you. And when it comes time for lunch, just have a bigger lunch. Don't go too crazy. Just overall, you got to watch your overall calorie intake, like we said, and then just making sure that you get to the gym religiously. Like as a teen, you have no responsibilities. Maybe you work, but you don't have a household to take care of. You don't have another mouth to feed. So all you got to worry about is yourself at that point. So take advantage of that. Go to the gym later at night. Wake up earlier in the morning. You don't have to sleep till 12 o'clock. Wake up early. I look at you when I say sleep till 12 o'clock. But, wake up earlier. Wake up an hour earlier. Go to the gym. Get it done. Maybe use a routine that will help you fit it in throughout the day. You got to be flexible with this because life is always going to get in the way. I always tell all my clients that life is always going to get in the way. It's never going to be the most optimal time to start, finish, whatever. You just got to make it happen. Again, if you love this and you really want to change your physique, you'll find a way.
Yeah, I totally agree. What about Pete, did you have a job when you were younger? Did you have like anything that sort of conflicted?
Did you do anything, you piece of crap?
Did you have anything that conflicted or anything like that with your goals when you were younger and get in the way at all?
Yeah, I mean, I work too as well. I never really, as a teenager, I never really found that my time was extremely limited, though I always could fit in a workout and I could always fit in meals. And the biggest thing I think for me was, as a teen when I first started, I loved every aspect of training and nutrition, so I looked forward to it all the time. So it wasn't like I had to make time for it. I pretty much had to make time for everything else, so if I had school and I had obligations, okay, after school, what I really want to do, the first thing I want to do is I want to go to the gym and I want to train. So I want to get that done first, Maybe that's not the best way to go about it because sometimes, school stuff might suffer. I don't recommend that. But, the bottom line is if you really love what you're doing, it's never really a chore and it's not really hard to fit it in. As you get older and you do have more responsibilities and you don't always have the time for the gym, and you don't always have time to be perfect with your meals, that can definitely make it a little bit harder. But I never really had trouble fitting it in because I was always looking forward to it. So I think a lot of people make it into a chore. I think if you make it fun, if you enjoy it, if your goal is just to get in better shape, you don't have to do the type of workouts that somebody else says. You could do the type of workouts that you prefer. You could eat a diet that you prefer as long as it fits in with your goals, and make it a lifestyle that you enjoy. And I think that helps the process a lot more. When you make things harder on yourself, it's never going to be a good thing.
Mm-hmm. Success is a planned event. Nothing's going to happen on accident. So you got to just be prepared for your day. I would say that's the best piece of advice I can give you. It's a lot easier now than when we started, but when I started, it was all about having my meals with me and just making sure I carried them with me. That was it. So just make sure you plan for your day.
Yeah, that's massive, massive tips there, and I definitely think I agree with both of them. And I think, I'm 20 years old. I think that it's very valid that you guys share your experiences, and obviously you've been quick to say that things do get harder, so obviously I'll be looking forward to that point.
Yeah.
And I think
it's not undoable. It's not. I don't want to scare anybody. It's
No.
not undoable, but it just gets a lot harder.
Yeah, and I think obviously scheduling and fitting in workouts and things like that do get more difficult. And I do sometimes miss the days when obviously I was able to wake up at 12 and sort of relax throughout my day and fit in a workout whenever I felt like it, and not worry if I was sort of hungover or anything like that as a teenager. Things like that just sort of never be an issue now when you're older. So one sort of final question on nutrition that I wanted to ask was, when did you guys discover flexible dieting? Because I know that you're huge advocates of it, and so am I. And I'm interested to know when you guys picked up this MyFitnessPal and started tracking everything you ate. And more importantly, was it something that you, now looking back, do you prefer it a lot more than you did the initial bro approach? And how do the two compare? What would you say about that?
Well, I'll start. I got introduced to it. Actually, I was following AST's. I don't know if you guys know who Skip LaCour was, but at the time, he was actually the one who used to write down his diet every day, and he would follow a bro type diet, and he would actually count his macros. So when I noticed that, I said, I wonder if you could kind of interchange these things as far as, what you have to eat in a day. So I kind of dismissed it. I'm like, no, I'm crazy. You have to eat chicken and rice because that's what's going to, those are going to give you gains. And then it wasn't until I dieted for my second bodybuilding show that I hired my coach that I learned about flexible dieting. And then from there, it was just like, wow, this was so eye-opening because you weren't stuck eating the same thing every day. I mean, that may work for some people, but it's not going to work long-term. It'll definitely work short-term. It's definitely good during the week. We mentioned, get how to fit everything in. So it'll definitely work better during the week. If your schedule is the same Monday through Friday, it's definitely going to work a lot better to follow a quote unquote meal plan or a set food plan. And on the weekends, though, life is always going to happen. Life is always going to get in the way, and things are always going to be different on the weekends. You mentioned drinking. That's something that doesn't happen during the week, usually. So, again, flexible dieting has been a lifesaver for me. It's allowed me to continue this journey a long time. I flexible diet all the time, and my diet's never off. I've logged into MyFitnessPal for like 950 days in a row, and before that, I was using a Fit Day. It was called. It was actually just a website. It wasn't even an app, and I was using that for like 4 years straight. So, I'm able to do. I was flexible dieting on my honeymoon. People think that's crazy, but I was able to still make progress. While I'm on vacation, whatever. So that's why I like flexible dieting. It makes my life easy, and it makes this more attainable for the long term. If I had to follow a meal plan, I don't know if I'd still be doing this.
Yeah, see, that's a really good point, because that was pretty much how I got into it. I had followed the typical meal plan when I started, focusing on building muscle. And that was a period of time from about when I was 15 until about, I'd say I was about 18, 19. And I was just doing the typical meal plans. And, there would be periods of time where it just got so boring after a while, and you just get so sick of doing the same thing over and over again, that I would find myself in a position where I would just say, screw it. Today, I don't want to eat this meal. I'm going to eat, whatever it is I want. And I would kind of repeat this process over and over again and notice, okay, but I'm not actually, if I don't eat the chicken and brown rice, but I have whatever other meal I felt like eating that day, and I didn't end up just immediately getting fat or something because I wasn't eating a clean food. If I were to just have like a sandwich with whatever I wanted on it, and I'm like, well, why am I not getting fat? You're supposed to eat clean, or else if you eat these junk foods, you're going to get fat. I might throw in some potato chips here and there. And I noticed the weight's not just coming on. So, I was at that time, I was already, I understood grams of protein, carbs, and fats and stuff like that. So I just pretty much put two and two together, and I said, if I'm able to put these foods in here and not gain weight, maybe the food source doesn't matter as much as the total calories. Everyone was always stressing food sources, and it had a little bit of, detail and emphasis on total calories and macronutrients, but it wasn't the most important thing. I said, what if this is actually more important than the food source? So I started experimenting with it more and more. And, like Anthony said at that time, this was probably about 2004, 2005. Lane Norton was very big on counting macros at that time. And he was having arguments with people on the message boards. No, it doesn't matter. If you focus on protein, carbs, and fats, the food source doesn't matter. I said, this is very similar to what I'm actually doing right now. Let me just experiment with this more. And I pretty much just threw myself right into it and realized, after a few months, that if I want this food instead of the food on the meal plan and it fits in with the macros, I could have the same results. And, like Anthony said, it was at that point where I was kind of giving up on the meal plans, but I was still getting the results I wanted to. So it was a very easy transition for me.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I think we both found flexible dieting through bodybuilding. So I think some people find it and they run with it, and some people find it and they sort of slowly transition into it. I was someone that very slowly transitioned into flexible dieting because, like you, Pete, I was sort of in the mindset that, I can't get lean and eat like different foods. I have to eat like this fish meal. I have to eat this sweet potato meal. And this was only like in 2014, so really, really recently, even when there was a lot more stuff going around that was proving that this works. Obviously, when you guys originally got into it, it was very sort of still a bit unclear as to whether it worked or not. Now there's obviously huge amounts of testimonials out there that it does work. And I think that is an interesting topic, that some people do completely run with it and start like I do, topping their oats with all kind of stuff and posting it on Instagram and creating a sort of, I've seen people, I've had Jack on the podcast earlier on in an episode, and he's made a business almost out of his social media account through posting food pictures, and he only got introduced into flexible dieting in like mid part of last year, and then he just shot up as a result of just posting food pictures. So I think it is really interesting how people get into it, but for the majority I think it is an enjoyable experience. So yeah, that's really interesting. So guys, before I ask like a final question that I ask every podcast, I'd like you guys to have this opportunity to basically lead any of these listeners and my audience to any of your social media accounts, where they can find you elsewhere, and also potentially any products that you have that would really, really serve like a teen or someone young, like looking to really make the most of their gains in the gym, that you could have to offer. But yeah, tell everyone where to find you and what you offer.
All right. Well, thank you again for having us on, man. We appreciate it, and we're looking forward to that last question. It's gonna be a doozy, I think. But Yeah, so you guys can find us on New York Muscle Radio. We're all over iTunes. Just Google New York Muscle Radio. You'll find it, newyorkmuscleradio.com. On there, we provide coaching. So at any level, beginner, intermediate, someone looking to do a contest, so we have coaching there on newyorkmuscleradio.com. We also have our signature ebook there, which is Cracking the Flexible Dieting Code. And basically, in that ebook, we also have it available in audiobook version. But in that ebook, we go about how to set up your macros to start. And, if you want to gain, what to do from there. If you want to lose, what to do from there. And also included in the audiobook version, we have maximizing your metabolism, which is we talk about like similar to reverse dieting. But we talk about how to maximize your metabolism so you could eat pretty much at the most amount of calories as possible and still make progress. Because like we said, for us in the beginning, it was very, very different from where you guys are now. We were very limited to what we could eat. So in this ebook, we pretty much dive deep into what you can do to kind of eat those big voluminous foods like AJ posts up and still get results. Yeah, and you can follow me on Instagram. I'm at abfitness, and my co-host here is at jakkedfitness, JAKKED fitness on Instagram. Pretty much really active on there.
Yeah, that's definitely the best place to get a hold of us. I mean, you can catch us on Facebook too, but Instagram I'm on probably a little bit more than Facebook.
I'm on Facebook more.
Yeah,
I like
either
Facebook
one.
better.
I like both, but probably on Instagram a little bit more.
Yeah, so it's good to know where you're most active, so people can obviously follow you in the right places and keep up to date. Because I'm sure a lot of the guys listening to this and girls already follow you and already know of you guys. But yeah, just in case you don't, then make sure you do follow these guys. So the last question, which I ask on every podcast, is going to be for a teenager or a young person listening to this today. What would be the biggest tip you could give to them for something they could do tomorrow to better themselves, whether it be mindset, training, or nutrition, something they can implement tomorrow to make them a better person?
A better person? Oh, wow. This is tough.
Deep. Get deep.
I'll jump in. I mean, the best advice I could give, honestly, is just make a plan and then follow it. Just execute. It doesn't have to be the perfect plan. You could say, you could write down, okay, I'm going to go to the gym 3 times a week for the next 2 or 3 months, whatever it is. I want to lose 10 pounds. The plan is go to the gym 3 times a week, count my calories, and just execute it. It's very simple and very basic, but you'll be surprised what you can achieve when you actually put something into action, even if it's not optimal. People, like you said, they get confused because there's so many different ways to go about anything in life. They'll try and make it perfect before they start. You don't have to start perfect. Just write something down, set a goal. And if all you know is, okay, eat 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight, and you need to add calories or lose calories, depending if you're trying to add muscle or if you're trying to burn fat. If that's all you know, and you need to go to the gym, then write down, okay, I'm going to go to the gym this amount of time a week, and this is what I'm going to do with my diet, and execute it. You will get results.
Yeah, he kind of stole what I was going to say. I was going to say set goals. Set one big goal and then set little goals along the way. I mean, I know it sounds cliche to say something like that, but it really makes a big difference when you set a goal. All right, in the next 12 weeks, I want to accomplish X. Within the next week, I want to accomplish this. And I talked about that in the podcast that I did, How to Make 6 Figures as a Personal Trainer. You have to set goals, little goals in order to achieve the big one. So if your main goal is to make 6 figures in the industry, well, you got to start out by what you're going to do this week to get there. So again, little stepping stone goals along the way will go a long way. So set those little goals.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think it's very important to obviously write stuff down, like you said, Pete. Really, really important to get it visual. So yeah, guys, to wrap that up, I'd like to thank you so much for coming on. First of all, giving me the opportunity to come on your podcast, and furthermore, giving me the opportunity to have you on mine. I think it's going to really, really be a big hit and get a lot of views elsewhere and help grow my podcast. So I really appreciate that, guys. I hope that you enjoy the rest of the day. It's late here. It's like afternoon over there. So I'm sure that you'll have a good day, and I will speak with you guys soon.
Thank you, man. Thank you again for having us on. And I think that you're going to be the voice of teen bodybuilding. I really do. I've said that to him before, and I think you're well on your way to doing that. So just keep doing what you're doing, man. And again, we appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. You're doing really good stuff over here. You have a good message, and I think you're going to help a lot of people. So just keep doing what you're doing.
And this podcast ain't full of BS either, like the rest of them out there.
No, exactly. Yeah, this is honestly, this is one of the most enjoyed podcasts I have listened to, even though I'm on it too. So because there's no fluff in here.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you so much, guys, and that's really really nice to hear. So yeah, that's a wrap. Teen Muscle Radio episode 7 over and out. Thanks very much for listening, guys. See you in the next one.